Raven Steele's boots clicked against the polished floor of Nova Prime's most secure facility, each step echoing through the empty corridor like a countdown. The smell of ozone and burnt circuitry still lingered in the air, telling a story the security cameras had failed to capture. Behind her, Director Thane's agitated breathing provided an irregular rhythm to their procession. 47 seconds, she said, stopping at the vault's entrance. That's how long it took them to breach 8 layers of quantum-locked security. Her gloved hand traced the perfectly carved opening, edges still warm to the touch. Your taxpayers won't be happy. Thane's face reddened. Can you track them or not, Hunter Steele? The Coalition doesn't pay for commentary. Raven activated her neural scanner, cybernetic implants feeding data directly into her consciousness. The thieves had been clever, but even the most careful criminals left traces. Her enhanced vision picked up microscopic residue, ionic particles from a non-standard ship engine. Interesting, she murmured. They're using modified Cerulean thrust vectors. That's military tech, Director. Care to explain how common thieves got their hands on that? That information is classified, Thane snapped, but his elevated heart rate told Raven everything she needed to know. There was more to this heist than stolen terraforming protocols. She straightened, her black coat settling around her like gathered shadows. Double my usual fee. This just got complicated. The Coalition doesn't negotiate with Dash. The Coalition just lost their only working prototype of the Genesis engine, Raven cut him off. An engine that could terraform dead worlds into paradise gardens in months instead of decades. Either pay my price, or explain to your superiors how you let the most valuable technology in human history slip through your fingers. Thane's jaw worked silently before he nodded once, sharply. 3 days later, Raven's ship, the Nightshade, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the outer rim. The ionic trail had led her through 7 systems, each jump more precise than the last. These weren't amateur thieves running scared, they were following a carefully planned route. Her ship's AI, Aria, projected a holographic map of the sector. The particle decay suggests they passed through here approximately 36 hours ago. Their trajectory indicates the Helios cluster as a possible destination. The dead zones? Raven frowned. The Helios cluster had been abandoned decades ago after failed mining operations left the planets toxic and uninhabitable. Why would they take terraforming tech to worlds beyond saving? Before Aria could respond, proximity alarms blared. A massive ship dropped out of hyperspace directly above them, its hull bearing the distinctive crimson markings of the Shadow Syndicate, the galaxy's most notorious criminal organization. Well, Raven muttered, hands dancing across her controls, this just got more interesting. The comm system crackled. A deep voice filled her cabin, Hunter Steele. This is Commander Kai Vess of the Shadow Syndicate. Stand down and prepare to be boarded. This doesn't have to get messy. Raven smiled, already plotting escape vectors. Commander Vess, I don't do board games on first dates. She yanked her controls hard, sending the Nightshade into a spinning dive that no normal human pilot could survive. Her cybernetic enhancements compensated for the crushing G-forces as energy bolts from the Syndicate ship carved green trails through space where she'd been moments before. Aria, give me everything the engines have got. Plot us a course through the Helios cluster's radiation belt. The radiation will interfere with their targeting systems, Aria confirmed, but it will also prevent us from jumping to hyperspace. One problem at a time. The Nightshade screamed through space, diving into the golden haze of the radiation belt. Behind them, the larger ship followed, but Raven could tell they were struggling to maintain their targeting lock. Your pursuit is admirable, Kai's voice came through again, clearer now, almost amused. But surely you've realized by now that you're chasing the wrong story? The Genesis engine isn't what you think it is. Raven's hands hesitated over her controls for a fraction of a second. There was something in his voice, not the typical criminal bravado she was used to, but a certainty that made her instincts prickle. "Enlighten me then," she replied, weaving through a field of space debris. "Why would the Shadow Syndicate care about terraforming technology?" "Because it's not terraforming technology at all." A pause. "It's a weapon, Hunter Steele. One that could render entire worlds uninhabitable in hours. And your precious coalition plans to use it on any Outer Rim colonies that refuse to submit to their authority." The words hit Raven like a physical blow. She'd seen enough coalition peacekeeping operations to know it was possible. But if Kai was telling the truth, then the implications were staggering. "Prove it," she demanded. "Already have. Check your encrypted channels." The proof was uploaded the moment we started this little chase. "You're good, Hunter Steele, but we needed the best to deliver this information to the right people. Congratulations, you've just become part of something much bigger than a simple heist." Raven's secondary display lit up with thousands of classified documents, each bearing the Coalition's highest security clearances. Test results, deployment plans, casualty projections, all pointing to a weapon of unprecedented destructive capability. "The thieves," she said slowly. "They're not working for you, are they? You're protecting them." Kai's laugh was warm, genuine. Finally asking the right questions. "Care to have a real conversation? I promise no more shooting." Raven studied her tactical display, mind racing through possibilities. Every instinct honed from years of hunting told her this was a trap. But her instincts had also never steered her wrong about people, and something about Kai's voice carried the ring of truth. "Your ship. No guards, no weapons. Just talk. You have my word." As Raven guided the Nightshade toward the massive Syndicate vessel, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. Her reputation as the Coalition's most reliable hunter was about to be destroyed, along with everything she'd built over the years. But if Kai was telling the truth, then none of that mattered. Sometimes, she reflected, the real hunt wasn't about catching your prey, it was about finding the truth, no matter where it led. The Nightshade docked with a soft thud, and Raven checked her weapons one last time. "Arya, keep the engines hot. If this goes sideways, I will be ready," the AI promised. "But Raven, the documents appear genuine. Whatever happens next, I believe you're making the right choice." Raven nodded once and stepped toward her airlock. Beyond it, she knew, lay answers that would change everything. The hunt was taking an unexpected turn, and for the first time in years, she wasn't sure where the path would lead. But she was damn well going to find out. The interior of Kai's ship, the Rebellion's Dawn, was nothing like Raven expected. Instead of the opulent decadence typical of Syndicate vessels, she found herself in a command center humming with purpose. Holographic displays showed real-time data from across the Outer Rim, refugee movements, resource shipments, and Coalition fleet positions. Kai Vest stood at the center of it all, his tall frame silhouetted against the stars. He turned to face her, and Raven's cybernetic eye automatically analyzed his features: strong jaw, calculating green eyes, and a network of subtle scars that spoke of years of combat. "Welcome aboard," he said, spreading his arms. "I apologize for the theatrical entrance, but we needed to be certain you were alone." "Spare me the pleasantries," Raven replied, keeping her hand near her pulse pistol. "Show me what's really going on with the Genesis engine." Kai's expression darkened. He gestured to a nearby console, and a hologram materialized between them, a planet wrapped in swirling clouds of sickly green gas. This was New Haven, 3 months ago. The Coalition called it a natural disaster, a tragic accident of atmospheric degradation. The image shifted, showing corpses in the streets, people clutching their throats. This was their first test. Raven's augmented vision zoomed in on the details, her neural processors comparing the data to known weapon signatures. The particle decay pattern, it matches the residue I found in the vault. Exactly. The Genesis engine doesn't create life, it destroys it, at the molecular level. Imagine, a weapon that can turn a planet's atmosphere toxic in hours, leaving the infrastructure intact for coalition forces to simply walk in and claim it. The thieves, Raven said slowly. They're trying to prevent this from happening again. Kai nodded. Lyra and Phoenix. Former coalition scientists who discovered the truth and couldn't live with it. They're not criminals, Raven. They're heroes. Before she could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. A tactical officer rushed to Kai's side. Sir, coalition warships just dropped out of hyperspace. 3 Devastator-class destroyers. How did they find us so quickly? Kai demanded, already moving to battle stations. Raven felt her blood run cold. Her hand went to her neck, finding the nearly invisible scar there. Because of me. They must have tagged me during my briefing with Thane. She met Kai's eyes. I led them right to you. Instead of anger, she saw only determination in his face. Then help us fight them. The ship rocked as the first volley of coalition fire struck their shields. Raven made her decision. Arya, she commanded through her neural link, transfer control of the Nightshade's weapons to the Rebellion's Dawn. Authorization code Sierra 9 Echo. Acknowledged, her AI responded. It has been an honor serving with you, Raven. Kai raised an eyebrow. Your ship's AI sounds remarkably loyal. She's family, Raven said simply, moving to a tactical station. Her cybernetic systems interfaced seamlessly with the ship's controls. Now, about those destroyers. The next hour was chaos. The Rebellion's Dawn, despite its size, proved remarkably agile. With the Nightshade's additional firepower providing coverage, they managed to hold the coalition forces at bay. But they were still outnumbered and outgunned. We can't keep this up, Kai shouted over the sound of another impact. We need to get to the rendezvous point. Lyra and Phoenix will be waiting with the engine. The rendezvous is compromised, Raven replied, her augmented mind racing through calculations. They'll have task forces waiting at every likely location. She paused, an idea forming. But I know somewhere they won't expect. I'm listening. The radiation belt around New Haven. The Coalition thinks it's too dangerous to navigate after their weapon test. But with my neural augments, I can plot a safe course through. Kai studied her for a long moment. If you're wrong, we'll all die horrible deaths from radiation poisoning. If I'm right, we'll have a chance to expose the truth and stop this weapon from being used again. She met his gaze steadily. Your choice, Commander. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Plot the course, Hunter Steele. The Rebellion's Dawn dove into the golden haze of New Haven's radiation belt, the Coalition destroyers falling behind rather than risk the deadly particles. Raven's consciousness expanded as she interfaced directly with the ship's navigation systems, her augmented senses reading the shifting patterns of radiation like a map. There's something else you should know, Kai said quietly as they maneuvered through the deadly field. The Genesis engine wasn't just designed to destroy worlds. In the right hands, it could actually do what the Coalition claimed, terraform dead planets into habitable ones. That's what Lyra and Phoenix are trying to protect. Hope, not destruction. Raven's hands stilled on the controls. You're telling me this weapon could actually save the Outer Rim colonies? With the right modifications, yes. But the Coalition would rather use it as a weapon of control. They've spent decades keeping the Outer Rim dependent on their resources. True terraforming technology would change everything. A notification flashed in Raven's cybernetic vision, encrypted transmission, originating from somewhere in the radiation belt. I'm picking up a signal, she announced. Weak, but definitely artificial. That's them, Kai confirmed. Lyra and Phoenix found an old mining outpost in the belt. They've been working on modifying the engine there. As they drew closer to the signal source, Raven felt doubt gnawing at her. Everything she'd believed about her role, about justice and law in the galaxy, was being turned upside down. She'd spent years hunting people like Lyra and Phoenix, never questioning whether they might be the ones fighting for what was right. The mining outpost emerged from the golden haze, a sprawling complex of interconnected modules, half hidden in a massive asteroid. As they docked, Raven turned to Kai. "If we do this, there's no going back. The Coalition will brand us all as traitors." Kai's hand found hers, warm and steady. "Sometimes the right path isn't the easy one. The question is, are you ready to become the hunter who turned protector?" Raven thought of all the bounties she'd collected, all the lives she'd affected in the name of Coalition law. Then she thought of New Haven, of worlds dying while the technology to save them was turned into a weapon. "Lead the way, Commander," she said. "Let's go meet your scientists." The mining outpost's air tasted of metal and old dreams. Raven's cybernetic eye adjusted to the dim lighting, scanning for threats out of habit. Beside her, Kai moved with the quiet confidence of someone used to underground operations. Their footsteps echoed through corridors that hadn't seen maintenance in decades. "Stop right there." A voice rang out from the shadows, accompanied by the distinctive hum of a plasma rifle charging. Raven's combat systems activated automatically, but Kai raised a hand. "It's all right, Lyra. She's with us." A figure emerged from a hidden alcove, a woman with silver-white hair and eyes that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Cybernetic implants similar to Raven's traced delicate patterns across her temples. "The Coalition's most famous hunter?" Lyra's aim didn't waver. "Forgive me if I'm skeptical." "Show her," Kai said quietly. Raven pulled up the classified files she'd been studying during their flight through the radiation belt, projecting them into the air between them. "The Coalition is planning to deploy the Genesis engine on 3 more colonies within the month. Officially, they'll blame atmospheric degradation again. I want to help stop them." Lyra studied her for a long moment before lowering her weapon. "Phoenix," she called out, "we have guests." A door slid open at the end of the corridor, revealing a laboratory that looked like it had been assembled from salvaged parts and pure determination. A man stood at a central workstation, his dark skin contrasting with the white Coalition science uniform he still wore. The Genesis engine sat on a testing platform behind him, smaller than Raven had expected, its surface covered in shifting patterns of light. "So," Phoenix said, wiping his hands on a rag, "the hunter becomes the hunted. Welcome to the Resistance." "The engine," Raven said, moving closer to examine it. "Kai says you can modify it to actually terraform worlds instead of destroying them." "We already have," Lyra replied, joining them. "That's what it was originally designed for. The Coalition corrupted our work, turned a tool of creation into a weapon of mass destruction." Her voice hardened. "We won't let them use it again." A sudden explosion rocked the outpost. Warning lights flashed as emergency bulkheads began to seal. "They found us," Phoenix shouted, already moving to secure the engine. "Coalition strike team, has to be." Raven's neural implants connected to the outpost's ancient security system. 6 squads, heavy weapons. "They're using radiation-shielded assault craft." She turned to Kai. "This was too fast, they couldn't have followed us through the radiation belt." "No," Kai's face darkened. "They were already here, waiting. We have a traitor in the Resistance." Another explosion, closer this time. The sound of plasma cutters working through the outer doors echoed through the complex. "We need to move." Lyra grabbed a data core from her workstation. "Phoenix, is the engine ready for transport?" "Not without losing the terraforming modifications. We need at least 10 minutes to stabilize the core." "We don't have 10 minutes," Kai growled, checking his weapons. Raven made a decision. Yes, you do. She interfaced directly with the outpost systems, her consciousness expanding to encompass every corridor and junction. I can slow them down. Kai, there's a maintenance shaft behind the primary lab. Get them out of here. Raven. Kai started, but she cut him off. I've spent years hunting people across the galaxy. Time to see how the Coalition likes being on the other end. She managed a smile. Go. I'll catch up. For a moment, she thought he might argue. Instead, he stepped forward and kissed her, brief but fierce. Don't you dare die, Hunter Steele. Wouldn't dream of it, Commander. As they rushed to evacuate the lab, Raven turned her full attention to the incoming Coalition forces. Her augmented mind reached out, seizing control of every system still functional in the ancient outpost. Doors sealed and unsealed randomly, creating a maze of dead ends. Artificial gravity fluctuated wildly in selected corridors. Emergency lighting strobed in patterns designed to disorient troops wearing night vision gear. But the Coalition soldiers were well trained. They adapted quickly, splitting into smaller teams and methodically working their way toward the lab. Raven fell back, setting traps and ambushes, using her knowledge of their tactics against them. Every second she bought was another second for Phoenix to stabilize the engine. A bullet grazed her shoulder, bringing her attention back to her immediate surroundings. A Coalition commando had managed to flank her position. She dove for cover as more shots followed. Traitor, the commando shouted. We trusted you, Steele. She recognized the voice, Captain Marcus Reed, someone she'd worked with on multiple hunts. The real traitors are the ones turning terraforming technology into a weapon, Marcus. How many colonies are you willing to help them destroy? We're preserving order. Without Coalition control, the Outer Rim would descend into chaos. Is that what they told you about New Haven? Raven's cybernetic eye spotted a weakness in the corridor's structure. One well-placed shot. How many civilians did you watch die there? Marcus's hesitation was all she needed. Her shot hit a support beam, bringing down a section of ceiling between them. By the time he could advance, she was already gone. Her neural link crackled with Kai's voice, engine secure. We're heading for the backup extraction point. Status? Delayed them as long as I could, Raven replied, sprinting through the corridors. But they're adapting faster than expected. Someone's feeding them information about the outpost's layout. Get to level 3, Junction 7. We'll pick you up there. Raven changed course, but something was nagging at her enhanced senses. The Coalition forces' movement patterns had shifted. They weren't just pursuing anymore, they were hurting her. Too late, she realized her mistake. As she rounded the corner to Junction 7, she found herself facing not just Marcus, but an entire squad of Coalition commandos. And with them stood a familiar face that made her blood run cold. Director Thane smiled thinly. Did you really think we wouldn't have contingencies for your neural augments, Hunter Steele? Everything you've seen, everything you've heard, we've been tracking it all. The traitor in the Resistance, Raven said slowly. It was me. My own implants. The perfect unknowing spy, Thane nodded. And now you've led us right to them. The Genesis engine will reshape the galaxy, one way or another. Pity you won't be around to see it. As the commandos raised their weapons, Raven's mind raced. Her neural link to Kai was still open. They would have heard everything. The Resistance would know to change their plans, to adapt. Sometimes, she realized, victory meant making sure your enemies didn't win. She smiled at Thane. You forgot something, Director. Oh? And what's that? I'm not just connected to their systems. Her consciousness reached out one last time, interfacing with the outpost's ancient reactor core. I'm connected to everything. The corridor erupted in blinding light as emergency protocols activated, blast doors slamming shut on all sides. Warning sirens screamed as reactor containment began to fail. "What have you done?" Thane demanded. "Changed the game," Raven replied, as radiation alarms began to sound. "Run." Kai stood at the viewport of the rebellion's dawn, watching the mining outpost collapse in a series of silent explosions. The radiation belt's golden haze turned the destruction into an eerily beautiful light show. Behind him, Lyra and Phoenix worked frantically to stabilize the Genesis engine, but his eyes remained fixed on the disintegrating station. "Commander," his tactical officer called out. "No escape pods detected. But, there's something strange in the radiation patterns." Before he could respond, the ship's communications system crackled to life. A familiar voice, weak but unmistakable. "Miss me? Raven?" Kai spun around. "How dash?" Turns out having top-of-the-line coalition neural implants has its advantages. I uploaded my consciousness into the radiation belt sensor network moments before everything went dark. Not comfortable, but better than the alternative. Lyra looked up from her work, eyes wide. "That should be impossible. The data density alone dash. Can we get her out?" Kai demanded. Phoenix was already moving to a console. "Maybe. The Genesis engine's quantum matrix might be able to serve as a temporary housing. It's risky, but dash." "Do it," Kai ordered. He touched the communications panel. "Hold on, Raven. We're coming for you." The next hour was a blur of technical jargon and desperate improvisation. Using the engine's advanced systems, they managed to create a pathway through the radiation, downloading Raven's consciousness bit by bit. When they finally succeeded, her holographic form materialized in the ship's command center, flickering slightly but intact. "Not exactly the reunion I planned," she said, looking down at her translucent hands. "But I brought a gift." Her form rippled, data streaming from her to the ship's computers. Everything in the Coalition's secure networks. Access codes, deployment schedules, communication protocols, it was all cached in my implants. Phoenix whistled as he reviewed the data. "This is everything we need to stop them. But Raven, you can't stay in the ship's systems forever. The power requirements alone dash." "I know." Her hologram turned to Kai. "That's why we need to move fast. The Coalition is preparing to use the Genesis engine on 3 colonies simultaneously. They're calling it Operation Cleansing Fire." Lyra's hands clenched into fists. "Those colonies have millions of people." "Exactly. They're making an example, showing what happens to worlds that resist their control." Raven's form shifted, displaying a tactical map. "But we have an advantage they don't know about." When Director Thane revealed my implants were compromised, he didn't realize it worked both ways. "I've been inside their systems, seen how deep the corruption goes. And I know where to strike." Kai studied the map, his tactical mind already formulating plans. The Coalition's chain of command is fragmented. If we can expose the truth to enough key officials simultaneously, we can force them to stand down, Raven finished. "But we'll need help. Those data caches I stole? They don't just implicate the Coalition leadership in weapons programs. They show decades of corruption, suppressed terraforming technology, deliberate destabilization of outer rim economies. The corporations won't like that becoming public," Phoenix mused. "Neither will the inner rim worlds who've been funding these programs without knowing their true purpose." Raven's hologram expanded, showing a complex web of connections. "We don't have to fight the entire Coalition. We just have to show enough people the truth." Lyra looked up from her work on the engine. "The modifications are complete. If we can broadcast the terraforming protocols along with the evidence, we give them hope along with truth," Kai nodded. Show them there's a better way. The ship shuddered as another radiation wave hit them. Raven's form flickered dangerously. We don't have much time, Phoenix warned. The power grid can't sustain her consciousness much longer. Then let's make it count. Raven's voice was determined despite the static starting to creep in. Kai, you'll need to split your forces. Hit multiple broadcast centers simultaneously. Lyra, Phoenix, the engine has to be ready. When people see what it can really do, they'll have to choose sides, Kai finished. He turned to his crew. Send word to every resistance cell. Today we show the galaxy what they've been fighting for. The next few hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Ships were dispatched, carrying data packets and instructions. The Genesis engine was carefully calibrated, its true purpose about to be revealed to the galaxy. Through it all, Kai found himself returning to the command center, where Raven's increasingly unstable hologram continued coordinating their efforts. You know, he said during a quiet moment, when this is over, we'll find a way to get you back into a physical form. Her holographic hand passed through his cheek. Always the optimist, Commander. But her smile was sad. Just promise me you'll finish what we started. These colonies deserve their freedom. We'll do it together, he insisted. You didn't sacrifice everything just to give up now. Before she could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Multiple coalition signatures detected, the tactical officer reported. They found us. Raven's form snapped to attention. No, this is perfect. They're broadcasting on all emergency channels. Every ship in the sector will be monitoring this. Understanding dawned in Kai's eyes. We can use their own communication networks to show everyone the truth. Raven's hologram stabilized, burning with fierce determination. One last hunt, Commander. Let's make it count. As coalition ships surrounded them, Kai gave the order that would change everything: begin the broadcast. All channels. Let them see what their leaders have been hiding. The Genesis engine hummed to life, its true purpose finally ready to be revealed to a galaxy that desperately needed hope. And in the command center of the rebellion's dawn, a hunter who had lost everything physical found something far more valuable: a chance to reshape the future. The rebellion's dawn hung in space like a defiant star, surrounded by the gleaming hulls of coalition warships. Inside its command center, Raven's holographic form blazed brighter than ever, her consciousness pushing the ship's systems to their limits. Broadcasting on all frequencies, she announced. Time to show the galaxy what their precious coalition really is. Across thousands of ships and stations, screens flickered to life. The truth about New Haven played out in stark detail, not just the destruction, but the years of deliberate suppression that led to it. Coalition officers watched in horror as their own classified files revealed decades of corruption and calculated oppression. This is just the beginning, Kai's voice rang out across the channels. The Genesis engine was never meant to be a weapon. Let us show you what it can really do. On his signal, Lyra and Phoenix activated the engine. Its energy signature changed, transforming from the sickly green of the weapon tests to a brilliant, pulsing blue. In the nearby radiation belt, something remarkable began to happen. The deadly particles started to coalesce, forming new patterns. Where there had been only toxic waste, basic organic compounds began to form. The engine wasn't just terraforming, it was creating life from death itself. Impossible, Director Thane's voice cut through the broadcasts. His flagship moved to the front of the coalition fleet. You're manipulating the data. This is rebellion propaganda. No, came a new voice. Admiral Chen of the coalition's Third Fleet appeared on the command screens. I was there when they first proposed weaponizing the engine. I stayed silent then. Not anymore. His fleet of dreadnoughts dropped out of hyperspace behind the rebellion's dawn. Stand down, Director. You've lost. But Thane wasn't finished. "You're all traitors." His ships opened fire, energy beams slicing through space toward the rebel ship. What happened next would be talked about for generations. Raven's consciousness, already stretched thin across the ship's systems, made one final, impossible choice. She merged completely with the ship's defense grid, becoming one with its energy shields. The Coalition's attack dispersed harmlessly against a barrier of pure thought and will. "Now, Kai," she called out, her voice strong despite the strain. "While the shields hold." The rebellion's dawn surged forward, Admiral Chen's fleet providing covering fire. More ships were dropping out of hyperspace every moment, not just military vessels, but civilian craft, corporate transports, mining rigs. Everyone was watching. Everyone had to choose. In the engine room, Lyra and Phoenix worked frantically to maintain the engine's transformation protocols. "The radiation belt is reaching critical mass," Lyra reported. "If this works, it'll prove everything," Phoenix finished. "No one will be able to deny what the engine can really do." The battle raged around them, but it was already turning. For every Coalition ship that followed Thane's orders to fire, 3 more stood down, their crews refusing to fight after seeing the truth. The rebellion's broadcast continued, showing not just the Coalition's crimes, but the hope the Genesis engine represented. "Raven," Kai called out, watching her hologram flicker dangerously. "You have to pull back. The power requirements dash." "Can't," she managed through gritted teeth. "Shields failing in sections." "Have to, hold." Suddenly, Phoenix's voice cut through the chaos. "The engine. It's responding to her consciousness." The Genesis engine's glow had changed again, reaching out with tendrils of energy that connected with Raven's fading form. The quantum matrix that had been housing her consciousness began to shift, transforming into something entirely new. The engine doesn't just manipulate matter, Lyra realized, her eyes wide. It creates new patterns, new forms of life. In the command center, Raven's hologram solidified, becoming more real with each passing second. The engine's energy coursed through her, creating not just a digital consciousness, but a true fusion of organic and technological life. "Well," she said, flexing actual fingers for the first time since the outpost. "This is new." Kai didn't hesitate. He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, feeling warm, solid flesh instead of holographic light. "You impossible woman," he whispered. Their moment was interrupted by a massive explosion. Director Thane, seeing his defeat inevitable, had set his flagship on a collision course with the radiation belt. "He's trying to destabilize the whole process," Phoenix warned. But even as the explosion rippled outward, something remarkable happened. The Genesis engine's field caught the energy, incorporating it into its transformation protocols. The radiation belt shimmered, and where there had been only death and waste, patches of organic matter began to form, the seeds of a new planetary ring system, one that could eventually support life. "It's beautiful," Raven said softly, watching the creation unfold through both human eyes and digital senses. "This is what it was always meant to do." The remaining Coalition ships powered down their weapons. On every channel, crews were demanding answers from their commanders. The truth could no longer be hidden. Admiral Chen's voice echoed across the frequencies, "To all Coalition forces, stand down. By order of the Combined Fleet Command, Director Thane and his conspirators are hereby relieved of duty. The Genesis Protocol is to be immediately reclassified as a terraforming project, under civilian oversight." A cheer went up throughout the rebel ship. Years of fighting, of hiding, of desperate resistance, it was finally over. But Kai knew this was just the beginning. "There's still so much to do," he said, looking at the transformed radiation field. "Colonies to rebuild, worlds to heal." Raven smiled, taking his hand. Her new form hummed with the Genesis engine's energy, a bridge between human and machine, past and future. Then let's get started, Commander. After all. She gestured to the stars around them, now filled with ships from every corner of the galaxy, united in purpose for the first time in generations. We have a whole new universe to explore. In the weeks that followed, the true scale of change became apparent. The Genesis engine's technology spread throughout the outer rim, transforming dead worlds into gardens, healing the scars of decades of exploitation. The Coalition reformed, its corrupt elements exposed and removed, its purpose returning to its original mandate of protection rather than control. And at the heart of it all, a former hunter and a rebel commander worked together, showing the galaxy that the lines between right and wrong, between organic and digital, between what was and what could be, were never as fixed as anyone had believed. The hunt was over. The dawn had come. And the stars themselves seemed brighter for it.